Hi, good morning, everyone.
Hey Rahul.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so do we have a new participant today?
Yeah, Rahul. This is Jayant.
Okay, Jayant. So Jayant, we have already started the batch. Almost like two sessions are done. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
so just want to understand, like, do you have any idea on BPM? What technologies you have worked on?
Yeah, I'm I'm familiar with the BPM tool.
Mhm.
So I'm familiar with the production online and offline deployment,
Mhm.
and I'm familiar with the components of the BPM, the process center, process server, um, and some UI. Familiar with the UI toolkits like Coaches, Coach Views, Heritage Human Services, Clients at Human Services, and
Okay.
but I haven't done any hands-on experience on that. I've just followed some YouTube videos regarding the thing, but I don't have any hands-on experience.
Okay. So that's good. I mean, you're familiar with all these terms, which is really good. Now, we have done one session on the architecture. Okay.
Okay,
So talk to the Mind Magics team and get that recorded video.
sure,
Okay. Go through that video. If you face any problem, any doubts, let me know. Uh, we'll discuss on that.
sure, yeah,
And one more session we did last day, that is how to create a process. That also we have seen last day. I designed a process. I'll show it to you right now,
okay,
but maybe not in details. Again, we have a recorded video on that also. Go through that. If there is any doubt, let me know. We'll discuss tomorrow. Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. Let me share my screen, guys. Just a moment.
Quick question, Rahul. So,
Yeah.
are we using the BPM from the cloud premises, or do we have to install in our local environment?
Um, for those who has less RAM, minimum of 8 GB is required.
Okay,
So you can use the BAW on trial version. Else, I do provide the licensed version of BAW. If you want, you can also install that in your system.
okay, okay.
Okay. All right. So, Pasha and Anup, are we good to start the installation today?
Yeah, Rahul, we can start
Yeah,
today.
We can. Okay. So let me know who wants to share the screen. I will just help him with the installation.
Okay, just a minute.
I'll stop presenting.
Uh,
I'm sorry, I forgot the name who joined today.
I go by Jay.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jay, share your mail ID in the chat. I will share this tool with you also by today.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Rahul, I think last day's video is not there. It's not been
Hmm.
shared.
Yeah, you have to check with Mind Magics because I don't have any, even I don't get the videos.
Okay,
So
sure.
let's check with Mind Magics once.
Okay.
So Pasha, once you are ready, you can share your screen.
Yeah, I will share. I'm copying the software. It will take maybe 5 minutes. It is showing.
Okay.
Okay, if not, I will share the screen now. Okay.
So extraction and everything is done, right?
Not yet. That will be, I think, it will take just 1 2 minutes. I think so.
It will take some time because each file is like 1.5 GB, 2 GB, like this.
Okay. Okay, I will do it and I will share with you, right?
Yeah. Okay. Then let's do something. You extract
Yes.
uh, right now. Then we can start the session. By the end of the session, we can do the installation.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Let me share my screen. All right. So just a recap, since we have a new participant today. So what we did last day, we created a process application, that is leave application, and the first thing is that in BPM, in IBM BPM, if I have to implement any artifact, we first need to create a process application. That is the first step. And after we create the process application, then we go inside the process app and then we start our development. Okay. Guys, please go on mute, everyone, please. If you have any questions or doubts, you can unmute yourself at any point of time and stop me there. All right. So we are inside the process application, and what we did last day, we created a process. And what was the requirement? The requirement was very simple. We had to implement a leave application for an organization. And what we did, we implemented two activities in the process. Let me open the process. So this was the process we implemented, a very simple one, where we understood these terms like what is the start event, this is end event. So start event will start the process, end event will end the process. And we added two user tasks. What is a user task? User task is basically creating a UI for the end user to participate in the process. Okay. So we created the user tasks, although we haven't seen how to implement a client-side human service or a heritage human service over here. That we will see next. And then also we understood these things like what are the different types of variables that we have in IBM BPM. We have input variables, output variables, private variables, expose process variables, and also we discussed about environment variables, right? So in case of any doubt, please go through the recorded video once again. If you have any questions on the last session, we'll discuss on that, right? Now, there was one more thing which we didn't discuss last day. So today we are going to discuss on that. Okay. Now, before we move ahead, a question to you guys, and it's a question to everyone. What are the parameters do you think is important for this process? I'll give you examples so that you can relate. If I'm an employee, if I'm applying for a leave, what are the details do we really fill up in an application form, the leave application form? So one can be employee ID. Let me just note it down somewhere. One can be employee ID. The other can be employee name. The other can be, say, type of leave. It will be a drop down which will have a list, right? Like sick leave, privilege leave, casual leave, all those different types of leaves we need to populate in a drop down, right? What other parameters do you think is important for this application?
Start
Uh,
date, end date.
yeah, start date and date.
Perfect. Start date, end date. Yes.
A reason.
Reason of leave. Yes. Okay. Now this will be the drop down. This will be the variable which will populate the drop down. Now, whenever the user selects a value like sick leave, we need to capture that value in some parameter. So selected leave can be that parameter. What else we have? We can have manager remarks. Once the task goes to the manager, right? So when he would open the task, what he would see all the details in read-only mode. and he would have a text area where he can add some remarks, right? So that can be manager remarks, and then we'll have two buttons in the manager task: approve and reject, right? So I can again take one more parameter called manager action, which would capture the value either approved or rejected based on whatever action is being taken by the manager, right? So these are the parameters we think can be implemented in this process, right? Now, if I go back to our process, can someone tell me if this process we need to trigger right now, and if I have to add these variables, whatever variables we just now saw, so what type of variables I should add? Input, output, or private?
Private variables, Rahul.
Okay, private variables. Anyone else will has a different answer?
If the I believe if the process is if the process is going outside the BPM, um, then then we need to add input or output variables. Since it's happening inside the process itself, we can just do private.
Correct. Absolutely. So the right answer is private variables. Okay, because we are nowhere getting this data from outside, right? So this employee, whenever this task will be created for the employee is going to create the information within the process, and whatever information is being generated in this employee task, the same information we need to pass to the manager task as well, right? So everything whatever we are doing with the data, we are processing the data within this process, and this data is not coming from outside, so it is not an input variable. We are not going to send this data outside the process, so there is no question of output variable, so it will be private variables. Okay, now if you ask me, Rahul, that is it possible that uh, we create a process in a real-time project and we don't have any input variables? It's not possible. Okay, so this is just the start of our sessions. That is the reason I'm showing you with private. But going forward, we will see there are many scenarios where you cannot implement only private variables. We need to implement at least some input variable. Okay, so we'll see that session as well, where we would implement something in the process as input variables. Right now, we are going to create the private variables. Now, how to create a variable, let's see. So this is the private, and next to it, what you have is a plus sign. So how many parameters we have? Almost like 9 parameters we need to add, right? So we'll add one by one. So here I clicked on the plus sign. You see on the right hand side, I can see some parameters are getting added. I see some name called variable one, which I need to change into a proper name. Okay. Please do not create any variables with test or variable one, variable two. These things are not at all used. Okay. So best practice is always provide meaningful names to your variables. So employee name. Okay, and what you see when I created this variable, by default the variable type is string. Okay, if you think that this whatever you are adding, if the data type is not string, it should be something else, then you have the select button next to it, right? Click on the select. You have this many data types: boolean, any, date, decimal, integer, string, time. If you still think that there is some data type which is not coming over here, so you see just below there is something called show all business objects. Right now it is showing only 7. If I enable this, it will show me all the 164 business objects and data types in this process application. Okay, so employee name is string, so I'll keep it as it is. What else we have? Employee ID. Employee ID will also be string, so I'll keep it as it is. Okay, type of leave. Type of leave will be a list, and you see here there is something called list, and I just enable this checkbox. Okay, and this makes it a list of string. Now in IBM BPM, in the older versions, okay, when we used to work on 8.5, 8.0, or even 7.5 till 8.5.6, We never had this UI toolkit. Okay, if you see here below on the left hand side, there is something called UI toolkit. So this UI toolkit was not available before. I hope you all know that this is a very new toolkit which was introduced in 8.5.7. Okay, and it was initially named as Spark UI toolkit, and later on the name was changed and a lot of things were upgraded inside this toolkit. Okay, so now it is called as UI toolkit, and you can see the version is 8.6.0. Now, in the older toolkits that we used to use, like responsive coaches or the coaches toolkit, there, if I had to implement any drop down, okay, so this toolkit has these controls like drop downs, text area, text box, integer box, data tables, okay, type ahead, all these different coach views, we call them as coach views or controls. So all these are available inside this UI toolkit. Now, in the older versions, when UI toolkit was not there, we used to use responsive coaches. And in the responsive coaches toolkit, also we had the drop down option. Okay. But in that, we used to use string list of string for implementing anything in the drop down. But in the UI toolkit, we have the same control, that is drop down, but there we cannot implement it as a list of string. It doesn't support. Okay. So there is a data type. Right now I'm using this term data type, but I will definitely want to change this in the next half an hour. I will use the term called business object. So we have something called name value pair. Okay. So name value pair is a kind of data type which is only supported in the drop down which we have in the UI toolkit. If I use list of string, it will not work. Okay. So we have to implement it as list of name value pair. So this variable type which you see right now as string, I will just change this to name value pair. Okay. Now it is impossible to search for a business object or a data type in this entire list of 164. We have a search box right at the top. Just type the name. You see it comes, just select it, and automatically this variable now is being mapped with name value pair data type, and it is a list of name value pair. Okay. Next, what we have, selected leave. Selected leave will be string, so I'll keep it as it is. Next, we have start date. Start date will not be string, it will be date. So I will just change this data type from string to date. Similarly, we have end date, which will also be date type variable. Then we have reason of leave. Reason of leave will be string. Of course, it should be string. What else we have? Manager remarks. It will be string again. And then we have manager action, which will also be a string. Okay. So we have almost like 9 parameters that we added, starting from employee name till manager action. Now, guys, if I see, go back to our process, okay, in this employee task or in this manager task, we need to create something, right? We need to create some human service. And going inside the human service also, we need to create all these parameters, this 9 parameters, right? At least for the employee task, we have to create at least 7 parameters. If not 9, but at least 7. That is starting from employee name till reason of leave. Right? Manager remarks, manager action, we can use it in the manager task. Okay. Along with those 7 variables, because we also need those 7 parameters in the manager task also. Right? Because without seeing those data, manager can never take any action. Okay. So manager has to see what type of leave Rahul has applied, what is his employee ID, what is the start date and end date, what is the reason of leave. Then only he will go and take some action on my leave application, right? So so we are clear about one thing, that whatever parameters we have added, those same parameters we need to add in the employee task as well as in my manager task, right? Now, don't you think, guys, is an overhead that whatever parameters, 9 parameters or 19 parameters, whatever I'm adding in the process level, again I need to add the same set of 19 parameters again for my employee task, again for my manager task. And this is a very simple process which has only one level of approval. Just think, if there are multiple levels of approval, is it really possible for me as a developer to go and create this 9 variables or whatever weight number is there to creating each and every task? It's very difficult. It's a bit of overhead, right? And by chance, like I'm a human being, if I miss out on some parameter, right, then what would happen? Data loss, right? Data will not go, or whatever, say employee ID is a very important parameter here. Say I forgot to add that in the manager tasks, so the manager would see the employee ID as blank. He would not see what is the employee ID of this employee. So again, it will be difficult for him to take an action on my leave application, right? So each of this parameter is important for us, and we need to add them in everywhere wherever we are adding. Okay. Now let me give you a scenario. After 4 months, suddenly the customer comes and tells you that, hey, we need to add one more control on the UI, which means that we have to add one more parameter. Okay, say employee location. Now again I have to go back to all those human services, and again I need to add this extra parameter again I have to add it in the process layer, and wherever I am using it, whether in my services, human services, or even say system services, right? Say I am updating the database, there also have to update this new parameter, employee location, right? So it's a big overhead for any developer if you need to add these parameters again and again in every human tasks as well as in the system tasks. That is the reason we have something in IBM BPM which we call as business object. Okay, business object is nothing but the business reference of your process. Whenever you get the requirement from the customer, the architect of the team, okay, he sits with the requirement. He tries to understand two things. The first thing is that what will be the design of the process, how many participants, how many teams are involved in the process, and that way the process design is being done. And parallelly, he also tries to understand or analyze what are the parameters or what is the business reference of the process. Which parameters do I think I will need in nearly every task which I'm implementing here? Okay, that way a business reference is being created. And what we do, like we design the process, parallelly we also create something called business object. Very, very important, something that we implement in every process. Okay, no process is complete without creating a business object. Okay, so we are going to see now how to create a business object and how we can implement it in the process layer. Okay, so how can we create a business object? Very simple. Come to the left hand side palette. We have something called data. Click on the plus sign. What we see here, business object. Click on it. It will give you a pop-up where we need to provide the name of the business object. Okay, can you see how this name is written, business object 1? If it's a big name where you have multiple strings, there cannot be any space in between. Okay, number one. Second is, a business object name always starts with a capital letter, an uppercase letter. And if it's a big name where you're using more than one string, then you can use camel case. Like here also you can see camel case is being used. Okay, so I'll give a name, employee information. Okay, anybody has any questions till now?
One question, Rahul.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so, what exactly is the difference between string and a name value pair? And why is the
Yeah.
reason that
Yeah.
you change that string to name value pair in that list?
Okay, we'll come to that.
Okay.
We'll come to that. Any other doubts regarding business object till now?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll come to that question. I'll answer that question.
Sure.
So I click on finish. This business object is now created. Okay. Now I need to add those parameters inside this business object now. Okay. Now Guys, before we try and see how these parameters are getting added, just few things. There can be two types of business object. Okay, one is a complex business object, and the other is a simple business object. Okay, what is a complex business object? Let me just show you our parameter list. These are the parameters that we will be adding inside our business object. Okay, one by one. Now here you see employee ID, employee name is string. Type of leave is again binded with name value pair, which is a list. Start date and end date is again of date type parameters, right? And again, reason of leave, manager remarks, and manager action all are string. So whenever we are going to add these parameters inside our business object, in our business object we'll have parameters of multiple data types. So whenever you are creating a business object with multiple data types, that business object is considered as a complex business object. If I create a business object with parameters of the same data type, say I add the parameters on all the data type are string or integer, then that is considered as a simple business object. In a real-time project, we always implement complex business object. Okay, because we have to deal with various types of data. Data can be of it can even be boolean, it can be string, it can be boolean, it can be date, it can be integer, and I can even add another business object in my parent business object. That is exactly what we did for type of leave, because type of leave is binded with name value pair, which is again a business object. Okay, so we'll discuss about this name value pair after I add all these parameters in my business object. Okay, so let's go and see how to add the parameters over here. You see here there is something called parameters. Okay, whatever else you see guys, common section is basically it will show you the name of the business object, who created the business object at what point of time, if I'm making some changes or if anybody else is making any changes to the business object, then that time will be updated over here. Then we have some documentation. It's an optional thing. You can add some documentation if you think like what is the reason you're creating this business object. Then we have something called behavior. In this behavior, we have something called definition type. Exactly what I was telling, complex type business object, simple type business object. Always you should go for complex type business object. Shared object, we'll discuss this later. Okay, it's something where it creates a kind of relation between two different processes or multiple processes using a shared object. How to do it and what exactly we get from a shared object or how to implement it, we'll discuss that later. Okay, before we see parameters guys, this advanced properties, okay, whatever you can see from here, do not change anything. Okay, this is something which we not use. Please do not change any values over here, your business object will not work. Okay, these are all the different type of configurations, so we never do any kind of configuration in this advanced property, so leave it as it is. Now we come to parameters. So one by one I'm going to add the parameters over here. Employee ID, just string, that's fine. EMP name, which will also be string. Type of leave, it will be name value pair. List of name value pair. Selected leave. Then we have start date, which will be of type date. End date, which will also be of type date. Reason of leave, which is string, that's fine. Then we have manager remarks, which will be string. And lastly, manager action. Okay, so now I add all these parameters inside this business object. and I can use this business object now at any place I want, whether it's a process, whether it's a service, whether it's any kind of service task, say some kind of service flow I'm implementing, any integration service or Ajax service, there also I can use this business object. Okay, there is no chance of data loss right now because all these parameters are added in the business object and I can use it any at any place I want. So definitely all the parameters will be available. If I'm adding the business object in all those artifacts, all these parameters will naturally be available to all those resources. Okay, so let's see how do we create a variable and bind it with a business object. It's very simple. So like I have added so many parameters, yes, I'm going to delete them. But before that, let me show you how to add a variable and bind it with a business object. It's very simple. Again, I'm going to create a private variable. I'm going to give a proper name, say employee leave information. Okay. And the variable type is string here. I will now change this to employee information. Okay. You see here, guys, this is the variable which we added. Now you see, if I expand it, we have the same set of variables that we have added before, right? So we don't need them. So we will delete it. So one by one, we'll select and then we'll remove. Okay. So now we don't require those 9 parameters separately. Now we have this business object and we can use it in our process layer. Now tomorrow, if the customer tells me that, hey, you need to create or need to add one more parameter, employee location. So what we will do, we'll go back to our business object and just add one more parameter here called EMP location. That's it. If I go back now to my process where this business object was already created or already added, you see EMP location is added normally. Okay, it got updated. So that is the advantage of using a business object in IBM BPM. Okay, and this concept of business object is there everywhere. If you go to any other BPM technology, Pega, Appian, or Camunda BPM, anywhere, everywhere this concept of business reference or business object will be there. Now coming to name value pair. What is this name value pair? Name value pair is basically it's again a business object. If I expand this, you see we have name and value. Okay. Usually name value pair was used in case if I am trying to get some data from the database. Okay, where uh, say I have say type of leave, which we are going to see in future that this type of leave, which will have the different values like say sick leave, privilege leave, casual leave. Say all this data are stored in the database. So whenever I'm fetching those details from the DB, okay, so say we have two columns of the database table. The first column is the serial name, serial number, and the second column is the value of those leaves. So I
So
can
I
fetch
can
it in a way. Yeah. So I can fetch it in a way that select value where name is equal to this. So it becomes easier for me to get the details. And that is the main reason why this business object was actually developed or introduced by the IBM product team. So that we can get the data details from the DB very easily because name value together can be used to get any details from the database. Okay, as a reference, you see where if you're using some select operation, I can easily add a where clause, and in that where clause I can use the name and I can get the value from the DB. That is the main reason why it was introduced. Now going ahead, we found that like for example, like we were discussing about the drop down in the UI toolkit. So this drop down was created in a way that we can implement only name value pair over here. We cannot implement any other data type that is not supported. It will not work only. So in the older versions, we used to implement list of string, but in this version where we are using the UI toolkit drop down, there it supports only list of name value pair. Okay, how to initialize it? How to write a code based on this, we are going to see today itself. So that time you will understand how to write the code, or how to populate name value pair or list of name value pair in BPM. That we'll see next. Okay. So understood why name value pair was introduced.
Yes, Rahul. Yeah.
Okay. 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 So let's then move ahead. So now, if we have understood, guys, any questions on business object? We are good. Oh,
We are good. Yeah.
okay. So now, if we have understood like how to create a process and what is a business object, the next step is to create a human service. Okay. So today, I'm going to create a human service for this employee task. Okay. And for the manager task, if we are not able to complete today, then next day we are going to complete it. So before we implement a human service, there are two types of human services in IBM BPM. One is the traditional one, which we call as the heritage human service, and the other is the client side human service, which was introduced in the version 8.5.5. Now, what was the reason behind adding this client side human service? The main reason was it was found initially in the older versions that the customer, whenever they used to access this application, they used to access the application through their desktops, laptops, right? Maximum laptops, not beyond that. But as the year progressed and as we are becoming more advanced day by day, so right now we have Android phones, we have iPhones, we are using tablets, iPads. So the customer wanted that why do I need to sit in front of the laptop and desktop to access the BPM application? Why can't I access to my mobile? So when we tried and implemented a heritage human service, and when the customers they used to open those tasks through their mobile phones, it was found that the page was breaking. Whatever controls we are adding, the controls are they are breaking basically. Say we have added say 5 text boxes, and it is breaking in a way say the text boxes appear on top of every text box. Basically, the page is breaking. What is this page breaking cause? Because the resolution is not supported in the heritage human service. So if I have to create a responsive page in IBM VP, I cannot do it with the help of heritage human service. And that is the main reason why client-side human service was introduced. And the difference between them is heritage human service. Yes, today we can implement the heritage human service in the web-based process designer also. But initially, heritage human services can be created only in the desktop designer, and client-side human service can be created only in the web designer. And the good thing about client-side human service is that we can create this client-side human service in a browser. And the advantage for a developer is without running the client-side human service, I can see the design, like how it is, how the look and feel is. If I'm adding a text box, or if I'm moving a text box, say in a horizontal layout or in a vertical layout, I can see the changes instantly. I don't have to run the human service and see. I can see it instantly. But in case of a heritage human service, we have to run that heritage human service and see how the design is looking. So from the developer's point of view, using a client-side human service is much more easier than implementing a heritage human service. Nowadays, if you see the different accounts, nobody uses a heritage human service. We are presently using only client-side human service. One more difference is there. Client-side human service, it supports client-side scripting. Okay, which means whatever code I'm writing, that code gets executed in the browser itself. But for a heritage human service, we don't have the concept of client-side scripting over there, which means whatever code I write, that goes to the server, gets the result, and then it shows me in the browser whenever I'm running it. So that is the difference. I will share one document where I have listed down the difference between heritage human service and client-side human service. Go through those differences. If you have any doubt on any difference, come back, we'll discuss on that. And if you want to have a session on heritage human service, we can have that separately. But in our sessions, we are going to implement only client-side human service. Okay. So how to create a client-side human service? On the left-hand side, we have this option called user interface. If I click on the plus sign, I get the first option as client-side human service. There is one more way to create a client-side human service. What is the other way? Simply come back to your process, click on the employee task. Last day I said that whenever you click on any component in IBM BPM, the properties of that component are visible below. So we have something called implementation property over here, where we changed from inline user task to user task last day, if you guys remember. So this is the place. And if you see, there is something called implementation. This is the place where you need to map your client-side human service. Okay. So either you can create it from the left-hand side from here, or I can also create it from here, from this new button. The advantage of creating a client-side human service from this new button is that whatever parameters you have added in the process layer, you can directly use that in your human service also without manually adding it. We added the variables manually, right? I went on to the variables, clicked on the plus sign, added the parameter, and then I binded the parameter with the business object. So this kind of manual work we need to do whenever we create a human service also. But if I'm using this option, we call it as the activity wizard. If I'm using this option, most of the things are created using, there will not be any manual effort. Everything will be automated. Okay. So let's see how we are creating this human service. So this is a pop-up which came up when I clicked on new, and I need to provide a name. So the name is employee task. So I'll just add CHHS. Now see the name, how it is being given over here, guys. So if the name is big, there should be space in between. If I'm using more than one string, all the names should start with uppercase letter. Especially the first string should at least start with an uppercase letter. Okay. And there should be spaces in between. And whenever you're creating a client-side human service, make sure that you enable this checkbox intended for use on multiple devices. It actually means whatever client-side human service we are going to create, whatever UI we are going to create, everything should be responsive. Whatever device I'm using to open this employee task, the pages should be very much responsive and should never break whenever we are changing the resolution of the device. Okay, so we should always enable this option. This option is not there in case of a heritage human service. So you can well understand that why I was telling you that heritage human services are not responsive. Then after you've enabled this, after you've provided a proper name, click on next. Now it is asking me that the variable that we are seeing here, employee leave information, which we have added in the process layer, do I need to add this variable as an input as well as an output in this human service? Both are enabled. So if you think that yes, I should need this variable both as an input and output in my employee task, then you just click on finish and your human service will be created with the variables. Now question to you guys, if you have understood the input, output and private properly, what kind of variable I should create for the employee human service?
Output, Rahul.
Okay. Others agree with this?
Yeah.
That's correct. We should create output variables. The reason being, Employee task is my first task in the process. Actually, I'm treating all the data inside the employee task. Now, obviously, I need to pass the data to the next task, that is a manager task. So it should be output variable and not input. For the manager, whenever I'm going to create the manager human service, I have to create input variable for manager task because it would receive some data from the other human service as the employee human service. Okay, so I will enable output and click on finish. This would create the human service for me. Okay, so this is a human service that got created, and I can see some diagram. I can see again something called start, then again something called end, and we have something called coach over here. What is a coach? Coach is nothing but the UI or the web page. Whatever controls we're going to add, like text boxes, text areas, drop downs, right, radio buttons, data tables, everything can be implemented on the coach. Okay, and obviously we need to write some code, right? In a human service, there can be something that that I have to implement some code. So for writing a code, we have something called client side script. So on the right hand side, if you see, there are multiple components over here which are available. One of them is client side script. So if I have to write some code, then I need to use this component. It is used a lot. Okay, if you're creating some human service, this client side script is used a lot because obviously we need to write some code, and that code we need to implement in this client side script. Okay, now coming to our requirement. Okay, before we implement, let me show the variables. See, it got automatically created. Okay, if I was creating this human service from the left hand side, I had to manually add the variables. But if I create it from the activity wizard, then all these variables, whatever we want to add, they will be created automatically. Okay, now if you see this structure, okay, employee information, if you just try to visualize the employee screen. Okay, now can you tell me which are the parameters do you think will be populated from before? Just try to think in a way that you are applying for a leave in your organization. Whenever you open your leave portal, there are few details which will always be populated from before. Can you tell me which are the parameters you think inside the business object which will be populated from before?
Employee ID and employee name, since free employer details.
Yep, that is right. So employee ID and employee name, that is fine. Anything else?
Current
The
date,
most
like
important one.
start date.
No, start date we have to manually go and change there. So
Type of leaf.
correct. That is
Yeah.
what I'm expecting. Type of leave. The drop down is always populated, guys, right? With the different values. We need to go and select them. Whenever we open our leave portal, employee ID, employee name, yes, I mean it's optional. Obviously, it should be populated from before. In most of the cases, in 90% of the leaf portals, but yes, we are not going to populate them because in future I am going to create a database connection and I'm going to insert all this transaction into database. Okay, and the way I'm going to implement the employee ID and employee name, like you are saying that yes, it has to be populated. So I can do it in a way that whenever some user is opening the task, automatically the employee ID and employee name will be populated. So we'll not use that. So employee ID and employee name for this implementation we'll keep it blank. So we'll let the user to add the details in the text boxes. But type of leave has to be populated from before, right? It's a drop down. So for implementing a drop down, if I have to write some code, then definitely I have to add some script before the coach, right? So before the coach loads, I have to add a script over here, and in this script, I am going to populate the type of leaf. Okay, so which means today we are going to see how to write coding or how to code in IBM BPO. So from the right hand side palette, I will just drag this client side script over here. I'm going to provide a name, populate leave details. Make sure that you connect the sequence flows properly. Okay, and now we need to write some code. And to write some code in a client side script, first thing is that you have to select the client side script, and then you see the properties are there: general, script, pre and post. We need to come to script, and this is the place where we need to write the code. Okay, now before we write the code, first see the structure very carefully. Employee leave information is a variable which is binded with the business object employee information. Okay, now what is the concept of object? The same we have in Java also. Similar thing we have in IBM BPM also. If I have to populate any data manually by writing through my code, you have to populate any value over here. Okay, whether it's employee ID or type of leave or start date or reason of leave, anything I am populating manually in the code, the first thing that you need to do is to instantiate the business object. Okay, or initialize the business object. So first in Java also, that the same thing we do. We first instantiate or initialize the object, and then only whatever parameters are there inside the object, then only we can use them. Okay, now here employee information is my business object. So first I need to instantiate that through my code, and then only I can use these parameters. Now the complexity of our coding of the requirement today will be more complex basically. This is a business object. We have to initialize it, and then we have to populate type of leave, which is again binded with the business object, and that is a list. So the coding will be a bit complex. Okay, so we'll try to understand and we'll try to write it down over here. Okay, so first of all, whatever coding we are seeing right now, we call this as the teamworks coding. Okay, the teamworks language. So when this product was developed, and it was developed by Lombardi, there was a team who developed this product, and the name of the team was Teamworks. Okay, so even now that IBM has acquired long time back this product, and they have named this as IBM BPM, and we are using this for so many years. Even now, this coding is called as a Teamworks coding language. Okay, now how to write a variable name in IBM BPM? TW. Okay. Now, what is this TW? TW stands for Teamworks. Okay. So it has no technical significance. It is just that whoever has written this code, okay, whoever has created this product, just to to make sure that we still are using those namespaces related to them. So that is the reason this TW is being used. Any kind of variable you write here, whether it's a local variable, whether it's a variable that you have created, any kind of system variables, any kind of EPVs, ENVs that we discussed yesterday, all the variable, always it will start with TW. Okay, no variables start without TW. This is the first thing that we need to write, TW. After TW, we need to put dot. Now, whatever variables, guys, you are creating by your own, whether it's an input variable or output variable or private variable, not EPVs and ENVs, only this thing. If you're creating any input variable or output variable or private variable, this kind of variables are considered as local variables. If I'm using any EPV or ENV, that is exposed process variable or environment variable, that time I would write it as tw.epv or tw.env respectively. If I'm using any kind of system variable, say for example, somewhere some error has come. Now I want to capture that error through some variable. So we have something called tw.system.error. So system is a system variable, which means we have system variables also. I need to automatically capture the username of the user, whoever is opening this task. So I can use a system variable tw.system.user.name. Okay. So we'll see all these examples in our sessions, but right now we are concerned about this local variable initialization. Okay. So I wrote tw.local. Whenever I put a dot, and if you use control and space bar, you get suggestions in IBM VPN. Okay. And what suggestion I can see here? Employee leave information. Because that is the only local variable we have right now in this human service. Right? So if I go and create one more variable here, say say a private variable, say I create a variable, say employee address. This is also a local variable, like I said, because whatever variables you create under input, output, or private, everything is considered as local variables. Now, if I put control and spacebar, now I get two suggestions here because we have two local variables now. Okay, so this is for example I'm showing you. So employee address we're not going to use, so that is anyways I'm going to delete that. So we will select employee leave information. Now we need to initialize this variable. We need to instantiate this variable which is binded with the business object. So how to instantiate a business object in IBM BPM in a client-side script? Very simple, is equal to curly braces, enclosed curly braces. Okay, that's how we instantiate a business object in client-side script. It's very important. I'm mentioning this client-side script because in a server script, again, the syntax will be different. Although this syntax, the good thing about is that this syntax, the way we have instantiated this business object, is also supported in the server script. Okay, like I said, that there is two types of scripting in IBM BPM. One is called client-side scripting, which we can implement only in the client-side human service. But anywhere, if you want to write some code, be it in the process layer or in the heritage human services or in any of the service flows like Ajax service, integration service, everywhere we need to implement server script. Client-side scripting is not available over there. But the good thing is that the way the syntax you can see right now in a client-side scripting, the same syntax you can use in a server script also. Okay. But the syntax which is originally used in a server script, that will never work in a client-side scripting. Okay. We'll see that part of coding later on because we have a lot of implementations on the server script, like database integrations we are going to do, service flows we are going to implement, Ajax service, integration services. That time we'll see how to implement a server script. Even in the process layer also we are going to implement some code in future. There also we need to use the server script. So that time we'll see the syntax that is used in a server script. Right now, remember, this is the client-side scripting, and this syntax is also supported in a server scripts, which is good for us, right? So this is the way we instantiate a business object. Now initialization is done, or instantiation is done for this business object. Now is we have to populate type of leaf here. But unfortunately, type of leaf is also binded with the business object, and which is again a list, right? So many complexities. If someone tells me right now that that populate employee ID, populating employee ID will be much more easier. Why? Because employee ID is a string, it's a simple variable. So if someone tells me that you write a code to populate employee ID, so it is very much easier now because I have already instantiated the business object. So I can simply write tw.local dot employee leave information dot, then you have all those parameters here. So employee ID is equal to say emp001. That's how you initialize a simple variable. But we are not initializing a simple variable here. We are going to initialize type of leaf, which is again binded with the business object, and it is also a list. So the syntax will be different. How different? Let's see. So we have type of leaf is equal to is a list of business object. So first we need to initialize it as a list. Okay. And how to initialize a list? In closed third brackets. Okay. You just write it down here. Initializing list. Okay. This third bracket, the significance of this third bracket is it is used to initialize a list, and curly braces is used to initialize a business object. Okay. Now that we have initialized this list type of leaf, each index will contain some data, right? Like zeroth index will contain sick leave. First index will contain, say, privilege leave. Third index will contain, say, casual leave. Like this will populate the leaves, right? Now, since name value pair is a business object, each index will be considered as an object. Okay. Let's see the coding. By seeing the coding, you guys will understand. So simply I'll copy this. Okay. So index I was talking about. So 0, first index is equal to curly bracket. This is clear by this statement that each index we have to consider as an object. Okay, because I'm using list of name value pair. Any list of business object that if you're using, guys, okay, always we have to initialize each index of that list as an object. Okay, then just initialize the name and value. So both we are keeping the same, as we are going to use only the value, not the name. But going forward, this is, we are creating some static list. So in future, whenever we are doing database session, that time I will show you that we already have a table, and from there we are going to fetch the details and we are going to display it on the drop down. Okay, that implementation also we'll see in future. Right now we are seeing how to initialize a list of business object in a script, and how we can use it in the coach. Okay, I'll copy this down to save some time, and we'll just change the index to 1. In this I'll make it as privilege. Guys, anywhere if you face any doubt, you can stop me there. You can ask me questions. We'll keep it as it is. We will have only 3 leaves right now. So sick leave, privilege leave, and casual leave. Okay. To make this a bit more dynamic, guys, you can use some JavaScript parameter. Okay. For example, var counter is equal to 0. So if you are using var operator, okay, to use any or to initialize any variable, basically we are initializing a JavaScript variable over here. Okay, we are not using the normal BPM variable, which is this. And why I'm using this one? Just you can replace this 0 with this counter value. Make sure we increment the counter. The good thing about using this is that in future, if someone tells you that that you need to delete one value, I can delete the value anytime and without making changes in the index. That is the advantage of using a counter over here. Okay, we are good. Any questions on this coding?
Rahul, one quick question. So you said regarding that var counter, a JavaScript one. So in the future, if they want to remove one value, then you would just delete this code, or how do you do it? Like
Simply delete this part. Say for example, tomorrow if someone tells me privilege leave you need to remove, I can just remove this. and I don't have to change any index also for the next one. If I'm using 0, 1, 2, and if I'm removing the first index, I have to make sure that I change the value of the last one to 1, right? So
Yes.
that dependency will not be there.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Cool.
Okay. Guys, be very, be very clear from the first day about, initialization and writing the code. I mean, the coding part at least. Okay. Be very, if you have any doubt at any code, we need to, send the alarm or, on the very first day, because a lot of coding is there. Unfortunately, a lot of coding is there in IBM BPM. If you go to Pega, to be honest, there is no coding, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing. Okay. Pega developers, I mean, when I started my career, I started with Pega. So I got a training of 1 or 2 months, and then I was moved to IBM BPM because in Pega, anyways, there is no coding, and I come from a coding background. So I'm a computer science engineer, so I have done a lot of coding in Java, C, C++. So maybe my managers and my leads thought that I can move to IBM BPM. So this thing I'm talking about 8 years back. So right now I'm working in IBM BPM only, and I've never seen any project where there is no coding. So coding is very important in IBM BPM. Okay. So yes, but yes, I mean complex codings are not implemented. Please do not use recursive functions and all the things which we have done in Java. Don't implement so much of things because IBM BPM is not made for those kind of coding. Okay, we implement it, but simple coding we implement, not so much of complex things. Right. So now that we have seen the coding part, now we'll come to the design part of the coach. Okay, so we'll select this coach. Okay, how to write or how to add the different coach views and controls in the code. So we'll see that now. So for that, right at the top you have this coach option. Click on it. It will take you inside the coach. Since we have used activity wizard, right, the coach design is also completed. Okay, if I'm using the activity wizard to create any human service, automatically the coach will also be designed. Okay, but we are not going to use it. We are going to again design it from the scratch. So I'll delete everything. Okay, right now the page is blank, and I'm going to add the controls from the right hand side panel. You can see a lot of building blocks are there. It says building block. You can also call them as coach views, or you can also call them as views. Okay, so basically these are all the different controls that we have here. Okay. Now I will do the design. What I will do, I will search for a layout first. Okay. Now guys, we have two types of layouts in IBM BPM. One is the horizontal layout and the other is the vertical layout. Now if you drag a horizontal layout and if you add the coach views will be placed in horizontal order. And if I add a vertical layout, if I place the coach views inside the vertical layout, everything will be placed in a vertical order. So I'm going to add a vertical layout. The search from the right hand side search bar. This is a vertical layout. I'm just going to drag it over here. Okay. Now whatever I want to add, like employee ID, employee name, all those things I can put inside this layout. Okay. So what we need text boxes. And in IBM BPM, the text boxes are called as plain text. Okay. So search for plain text and just add it over here. You see the label, it shows as plain text and you can change the label at any point of time. So definitely you have to change it to employee ID. Okay. After you add this coach view in this layout, you have to select the coach view and make sure that it is binded with some variable, right? Without binding, whatever the end user is adding, the data will not be captured in the video. So I have to make sure that we bind this coach view. And how to bind it? Very simple. Again, the same thing, guys. In IBM BPM, whenever you select any component, the properties of that component are visible below. Okay. You see there are so many properties are there. General, position, configuration, events, visibility, HTML attribute. Similarly, you have in the general property, you have two sections. One is the common section, which shows you the label, and I can change this label at any point of time. Tomorrow, if I want to change this to something else, I can change it from here. And what else we have? We have the behavior property. In the behavior property, what we have, the first thing says binding. So this is the place where we need to bind this variable, employee ID. So you click on select. You have this output variable, employee leave information. Expand it. First parameter is employee ID. Just select that. Okay, that's how we bind the variables. Similarly, I'll add one more plain text. This time I'll provide the name as employee name, and again I need to bind it with employee name parameter. Now comes type of leave, which is a drop down, and in IBM BPM the drop down is called as single select. Okay, we have two types of drop down. One is single select and the other is multi select. Multi select, you will see in many web pages where multi select drop down will be there, where you can select multiple options from the drop down. Okay, same control we have in IBM BPM also, that also you can use whenever you have such kind of requirement. For us, for this scenario, we are going to implement single select. This is a single select. Let's drag it over here. We'll provide the name, type of, or say select leave. Select type of leave. Okay. Now this is a drop down. Now for the drop down, the binding is a bit different. Okay. It is not as simple as a text box. So here in the general property, guys, we see the behavior. Here we need to do some binding. Now this binding we need to do with that parameter which will capture the final value from the dropdown. Which means if I am an end user, if I select sick leave out of these three different leaves we have, the sick leave will be captured in a parameter. So that parameter we need to bind it over here. That is selected leave. Now we have populated some parameter called type of leave, list of name value pair. So where do we need to bind that? To bind that variable, we have to go to the property called configuration property of the dropdown. Okay. So like we have general property, positioning and configuration, we have to select configuration. Let me just expand it a bit so that you can view it properly. Yeah. So here we have three different properties. So first property is behavior, the second one is items, and the third one is appearance. So we'll select items. In this items, guys, we see there is something called item lookup mode. And this item lookup mode has certain values. First one says start empty. If you drag a drop down, by default start empty will always be selected, which means it's a dummy value. A drop down cannot start empty. So I need to, implement something over here. Then only the values will be populated. Okay. So start empty is a dummy option. If I'm implementing a drop down in a real-time project, we need to change this from start empty to any of these values which you can see here. The second option is items from service. The example that I gave you guys few minutes back, that that we have a database table where I will store all this master data like sick leave, privilege leave, casual leave, and from there I'm going to get those details, get those leave types, and I will populate it in the dropdown. If you are implementing this requirement, you need to implement it using items from service. You have to create some service over here, mainly an Ajax service, which will get you all the details from the DB, and that we will show it in the dropdown. Okay, so whenever in future we are going to see this session on database, that time I will show you how to implement items from service. Third option is items from static list, exactly what we need to implement right now. Items from static list. I have already populated the static list in a script. So this static list will be populated in the dropdown. So for that, I need to select items from static list. The last option is items from config option. I'll give an example. There are two drop downs. The first drop down says country, and the second drop down says states. Whenever you select India in the country drop down, the states of India are populated automatically in the states drop down. Whenever I select USA in the country drop down, automatically the states of USA are populated in the states drop down. So if you're implementing any kind of scenario like this, where there is a dependency between two drop downs, and here if you're implementing the states drop down, so you have to come to the states drop down configuration, and you need to select items from config option. Okay, so this implementation can be implemented using a feature in IBM BPM called data change. Okay, so one of our sessions, maybe tomorrow or maybe on Monday. Tomorrow, today's Thursday, right? So yeah, so maybe tomorrow or Monday we're going to see that feature, data change. Okay, so right now for us we need to implement items from static list. Whenever I selected this items from static list, automatically you see a new option came up, static list over here. Okay, you see there's an arrow before the static list. If I expand it, I can define the name and value over here also, like sick leave, privilege. Just like use the plus button, and just continuously you can add the values over here. But it is not recommended. Okay, best practice is to bind a variable always in this case, not to manually add them over here. Okay, so in a real-time project, please do not use this table by adding the name and value. Please use variables. Now how to use variable? Next to static list we see a blue button, right? If I click on the blue button, it allows me to bind a variable over here. I can automatically see two buttons came up, select and clear, on the right hand side, which means if I use select, I can bind a variable over here. So I will bind type of leaf list of name value pair. Okay, that's how we bind a static list to a dropdown. Any questions on this, guys? In any of these options?
I'm good.
Are we going too fast?
Rahul, I have a query.
Yes.
Can't we create a variable and we can load that variable with the data of name value pair in that? Not possible. And that variable we can bind to this
No.
drop down.
No. It will not support.
I do not support.
Yeah. Only name value pair is supported over here. We cannot use any other data type or business object. Okay. I'll show you, since you asked this question. If I go to employee information and change this to name from name value pair to string. Okay. Say I make this a string. Okay. Now if you see, if I go back to this coach, if I clear it, and if I again bind it with type of leave list of string, you see an exclamation mark is coming automatically. What it says, basically it is not saying anything, but yes, it means that it is not supporting it. Okay, only name value pair is supported. So let me go back and change it. So never use any other data type for a drop down, always name value pair is used. So change it back to name value pair, and also change it here. Now the exclamation mark is gone, which clearly we can understand that only this type of data type is supported, or business object is supported. Okay. All right. Any other doubts or questions? Are we going fast? If I'm going too fast, please let me know and slow down. All right. So now we implement the other things that we have. So what we have start date and end date. So we have something called date time picker. Okay. So it's like a calendar. Just add it over here and make sure you provide the names. So let me name this from here now. Start date, and the binding has to be done. Oh, sorry, mistake. So start date. Similarly, again we need to add one more for the end date. Then we have reason of leave, which will be a text area, right? Text box is not used in this case because you know that the data can be a lot. So usually in a text area we can add more data. And the good thing about text area is that we can display everything to the end user also, whatever we are adding. So there won't be any scroll bars basically. So I would use text area over here, the text area, and it will be reason of leave. And what is the most important thing I should have in this entire coach? A button, right? And to submit this page, I need to submit my details. So I would go for a button. This is a button. Just add it over here. This button, I will name it as submit. Okay. And uh, now the question is, can we bind a variable with a button? Yes, we can definitely bind a variable with a button. I can definitely map a boolean variable with a button, because whenever you map a boolean variable, if you don't click on the button, the value is false. Whenever you click on it, it becomes true, right? But in case if you're using only one button in the entire coach, no need to add any variable. Okay. But in case of a scenario where you can have to implement multiple buttons, for example, in our case, manager task will have two buttons, right? Approve and reject. There I would bind with some parameter. Say for approve, I'll bind it with some approve variable, which is a boolean variable. Similarly for reject also, I'll bind some boolean variable reject. Okay. Now whenever the manager will click on approve, automatically my approve boolean variable will capture true, and that way I can understand that the manager has approved. Similarly, if someone clicks on the reject, automatically my reject parameter will have a value of true, and I can consider that manager has taken an action rejected. Okay. This way we are going to implement in the manager task. But for this case, we don't need multiple buttons. So we only need only one button called submit. So for this, I don't need to bind any variable. Okay. Now this button looks big, so I will change it from configuration. We have something called appearance. You can change the color style to anything. So I will change it to say primary, which will make it blue. You see, the good thing about client side human service, guys, whenever you're making any change, you can see directly over here. That is a good thing about client side human service. But if you implement a heritage human service, whatever changes you're making to the coach, you will not be able to see it until unless you run this human service. Okay. I can run this human service. On the top right corner, I have the run button. You see here. So I can use this run button to run this human service and see how it is actually looking on the screen on the web page. So this is the color style you can change, and yes, I will change this width. The width is too big, so I will make it somewhere around say 90 px. Okay, px stands for pixel, so you can use it. So you see the button became small now. Okay, I'll save my changes, and let us go back to the diagram. So this, from the code, you see there is a sequence flow which is already there from before, and it is connected to something called OK. OK is nothing but a button. And initially, when I developed this human service from the activity wizard, whenever it was created, already a button was added from before, and the name of the button was actually OK. Okay, so we need to change it. So either you can delete this thing simply and again add another sequence flow from the coach to the next component. Automatically, it will take your current button name. Okay. Now the question is, why from the coach, whenever I am adding a sequence flow to the next component, why automatically this button is being taken as a binding? The reason is, you see, in every web page, whenever you click on any button, then only you can come out of the web page, right? So similarly in the coach also, we need to adding a button is absolutely compulsory. If I don't have a button in a coach, then I can never come out of the coach, right? So button is important. And whenever you add a button, and whenever you connect a sequence flow from the coach to the next component, automatically the binding will be taken off the button. We also call it as the boundary event. Okay, buttons are also called as boundary events in IBM BPM. Why? Because it is whenever you click on the button, it takes you out of the boundary of the coach. It takes you to the next component altogether. So here the next component is my end event. So whenever somebody will click on submit, it will just come out of this coach and it will complete this human service. Okay, a lot of things we are going to see in future, like we will be doing some validation. Okay, like we have so many parameters. If any of the parameter is blank or null, I will throw an error message to the end user that this field cannot be left empty. So in those kind of scenarios, after submit, after the coach, I should have some script which will check the validation of my parameters, like whether it has a value or not. If it doesn't have a value, I'll once again go back to the coach. I will not let the user to complete this human service. Okay, so we'll see these things in our sessions. But before that, we have actually implemented this human service for now. So let us run this and see how we are able to see all the details. Okay, that is how my layout looks like. So I have employee ID, employee name, select type of leave. Now let's see whether we have the values. Yeah, so we have the values: sick leave, privilege leave, and casual leave. Okay, so if you just populate it, say EMP001, Rahul, type of leave is say privilege leave, start date, we have this date time picker. So I can select any date, say 2nd of February till 4th of February. Okay, so February. If I click on submit, this will complete this human service. Okay, are we good with the implementation, guys?
Rahul, I just one
Yes.
question. Uh,
Yes.
uh, how you link the submit? Can you just go back
Hmm.
again with the coach?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I added a button from the right hand side. I dragged it over here, and then I changed the label. But I did not do any binding because binding is not required for this case.
Okay. So this name label we can put anything, right? It may be
Anything.
clear or yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, anything. Apply also I can do. If I go back to the diagram, you see automatically the name has been changed
Oh,
here.
okay.
Okay. Any other doubts, guys? Or we are good? Okay. So if you don't have any doubts, guys, so it's almost like 9:37 here. So we'll close it out. We have completed 1.5 hour session. So we'll again connect back tomorrow, and let me know. Okay, okay. Before we close, so we need to do the installation. I forgot. Okay, so let's do the installation. So I'll stop sharing my screen. I believe Pasha, you are ready with all the things.
Yes, yes, I'm ready. Yeah.
One question, Rahul.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
regarding the JavaScript, so because I don't have much coding experience,
Hmm.
so how much of knowledge do we require for IBM BPM
Least,
regarding the
least
JavaScript?
knowledge. Okay. You can implement your IBM BPM code without any knowledge of JavaScript. Okay. Don't
Okay,
worry about that. Complex JavaScripts we don't write in IBM BPM. We used to write in the older versions. We used to create codes views. Since we never had those jazzy codes views before, so there we had to write all this complex JavaScripts. But right now it is not required.
okay.
Yeah, Rahul, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Yeah. So if you have copied all the files in C drive, so can you
Yes.
go to the C drive? Yeah.
Yeah, this is on desktop actually. I kept on desktop. You want into C drive?
Yeah. Please copy the entire thing into C drive.
Okay, just a minute.
And Rahul, since I'm not
Yeah.
there for the first two classes, so
Yeah.
how long is this course?
So this course will be almost like 30 to 35 hours.
Okay, like 35
So
working days.
yeah,
Okay.
so we do a session from Monday to Friday every day in the morning.
Okay.
India time from like 10 past 8 we connect and we end
Yeah.
by 9:30 9:35.
Okay.
Rahul, since the
Yes.
Pasha is copying, can I share my screen? I'm using the web one, cloud one, and I'm facing
Yeah.
some issue.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I will stop the screen.
You can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, I added this button, but
Mm,
when I go here in diagram, I see this thing.
mm. Yeah. Select that sequence flow. So maybe the button was removed, maybe the old button was removed and then you added a new button. So that is the reason. No problem. So you see in the general property below,
Yeah.
on the right hand side, you have something called behavior.
Yes.
And there the instead binding is showing an exclamation mark.
Yes.
Next to it, you have a text box. Next to it, you have a select button. Click
Yes.
on the select button.
Okay.
Select the submit. Click on submit and click on finish.
Okay. Now it's complete. Um,
Something
there
is
was,
wrong in your
yeah,
code.
there may be some error here. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
So Pasha, I hope your I know we had shared the 8.6 version long time back with you.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I hope that is not installed in your system, right?
No, no, it was there, but what I did is I removed that yesterday and
Hmm.
thinking that installing this one need a new installation.
Yeah.
So in that installation, what I have seen is it is going for the web PD, but few options were not there at that time.
Hmm.
Like I used to face the issues when EPVs and changing the values for EPVs and all those things.
Hmm.
Yeah. It is still,
Okay. Still copying.
yeah.
Rahul, are you going to send me that softwares to my email or?
Yeah, we'll send it by today evening.
Okay, thank you. And what about the recordings? Do I need to request you or from the?
You have to talk to Mind Magics for the recording.
Okay.
Okay, it's ready now. You can take the control of mouse or
No, let me tell you what we'll do. Okay, let's go inside the BAW folder.
okay.
Okay, guys, follow this thing very carefully. Okay, so you extracted everything in one folder, right?
Yes, yes, in the
Okay,
same folder. Yeah.
great. So usually, guys, if you don't extract, everything into one folder, what we actually do is that from the first, so there are three files: one of three, two of three, and three of three. Three files are there. So we go inside one of three. We go inside the repository folder of one of three. We copy the repository file. We come back to two of three. Again, we go inside the repository folder of two of three. We paste it, the repositories over there. Again, the same thing we do for the three of three file also, like copying the repository from three of three and pasting it in the two of three folder. So since, okay, guys, please go on mute, guys. A lot of noise is there. Yeah, thank you. So here, what Pasha has done, he has extracted everything into one folder. So that activity we don't have to do. So if you go inside the repository folder, Pasha, or in
Okay.
this folder, just would like to show
Yes.
everyone. Yeah, you see this many repositories we have here, guys. So we have DB2, we have repository. So now depending on your system, if it's a 32-bit, it will take the second folder. If it's a 64-bit, it will automatically take the third folder. Then what we have, the most important thing was, without the server, without was, we cannot install anything. That is the main reason why I asked Pasha that you had installed this 8.6 before. So did you uninstall that properly? If it is uninstalled properly, then only this installation will happen.
Okay.
Last but not the least is WBI, which is not required, although it is there, but we don't need it as part of this IBM BPM because we are not dealing with integration designer. But that's fine. We'll go with this also. So let's go back to the parent folder, PAW.
Okay.
Now, two things we need to do. First is we need to install the installation manager. I believe installation manager is there already in your system if you have installed 8.6. Can you just check it once?
No, no, no. I don't have because I didn't have the previous installation in this PC.
All right, great. So first we need to install the installation manager. That is right now, right at the top. You see the second folder from the top, IM64.
Okay.
We can go inside that, and we have this install right. So we have this install file. Right click on it and run as administrator.
Okay. Right.
What is the reason behind installing this installation manager is that in future, if I need to uninstall this BPM, I can uninstall it from the installation manager. If I want to install some IBM product in future like ODM or IID, I can do it with the help of installation manager. Okay. So just click on next and you can move forward. It will show you the location where it is getting installed. So this is the location. I click on next and move ahead if you're fine with the location. So what is the size and everything is being shown, like how much size it is needed. how much size available. So if you are fine with that, you click on install. Okay, so it will be installed. Now meanwhile, you need to create one user in your system. Okay, so you need to add one more user, add an account in your system, and the account name, I mean the username and password, let me provide you in the chat.
Okay.
Why we are doing this, I'll let you know.
This one was the user.
Oh yeah, you have already created, it's there. Good.
Yeah, I mean, while installing, I created this user.
Great. So guys, this is a user which we need to create, because whenever you're installing this IBM BPM, okay, we have to make sure that some DB administrator user is already created in our system, and we also need to make sure that this DB2 person, this DB2 admin, has to be an administrator. Okay, so like right now you can see Pasha has already created from before DB2 admin, a user who is an administrator, and he has also provided some password for this user.
Yeah.
So whenever we are going to install this IBM BPM product now, you will see there will be a place where we need to provide the credentials of this user.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I've given this one.
Yeah, I guess you followed
The
the
previous.
installation document which I had shared.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's done. So we are good. We can close this installation manager. We would not need it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to the folder, parent folder. Okay. Now we need to install the IBM BPM now. The second last option says Launchpad 64. Right click on it, run as administrator. Guys, make sure if you're installing this IBM BPM product in any of your systems, you have to have the administrator privileges. Otherwise, it will not be installed. Okay, so we would go for typical. Yeah, please update it. Yeah, take few seconds.
Rahul, could you please also share me the document, whatever you shared in the previous class, along with that difference between heritage and client-side human services document that you are about to share?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, it's done. Okay,
Yes.
so we go for typical installation. So what we see here, we have two options: install workflow center and install workflow server. We always need to select install workflow center. Why? Install workflow center, if you select it, this will create a development environment and process designer will be available. If I'm installing this product for non-prod, for prod environment or for any staging environment, then I have to select the second option, which would not give me any process designer. Okay, so we'll go for the first option and click on next. Since we have kept all the files in C drive, automatically the name of the host and installation location have popped up. If you had installed or if you had kept the files in D drive or any other drive, the installation will anyways not happen and the host name will not be picked up. Okay, so make sure we are keeping in the C drive and installing it. Okay, sale administrator. So two admin credentials we need to create here, one for the sale administrator, one for the deployment administrator. So you can put the username as sale admin. Password can be say password 1234. For the deployment, you can give it as dep admin, and the same password you can keep it. Click on next. So we have this place where we need to provide the DB2 credentials, the DB2 admin credentials. So the same user you created, DB2 admin in your system,
Okay.
you need to provide the same username. and the same password you provided over there, dbadmin1. Yeah. Click on next. Right. So if you have a support account, you can provide the details. Else, you can just disable that checkbox. Use your support account. Yeah. And enable this license agreement checkbox and click on install software. So this would take some time. It would take somewhere around like maybe maximum half an hour. Okay. So make sure your PC does not sleep at this point of time. And the installation can be aborted if the PC goes down.
Okay.
All right. So that's how we install it. So wait for next half an hour. I mean, you check it from your end. If anything occurs, if any error comes up,
Yes.
please drop an email or we can check it tomorrow also.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a
See
good day.
Thank you.
Connect tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.